fact, 2 of the people caught in this guy's truck were children. But the problem is, none of these people coming into the country are going to accomplish anything positive. Their best hope is to work in an illegal capacity or live as a fugitive, and they probably have to send money back to the criminal underworld for getting them into the country through this life-changing ordeal in the first place. None of this helps anybody, and that guy bringing those 2 children in doesn't know who anybody is. He thinks he's bringing people from one gas station to another gas station, making the world a better place. No, he's not. What do you think about this? Are these smugglers making society better or worse? I think the answer's pretty obvious. Let me know. I'll see you in the next video.
We build websites for really cool hotels, and we do it in Webflow.
But that wasn't all.
An exclusive look now into the cartel and their control, not just in Mexico, but right here on American soil. We captured the moment cartel traffickers confronted our News Nation team.
So gangs have taken territory at the U.S. border and are using it to conduct criminal operations inside America. And although President Trump has made it his mission to lock down the U.S. border like never before, the claiming of territory near a small town by criminals isn't something anyone expected. And now the U.S. military is responding in a way that some are saying goes a bit too far.
We just saw a group of what appears to be these scouters with masks on. They were waving to us. One of them even joked that he's with the FBI. Clearly, we have a camera right in front of us, so they're most likely trying to find the right opportunity right now to smuggle people across. And I'll tell you, if you ask Border Patrol agents out here, they'll probably tell you that these guys are in for a rude awakening.
Armed drones are among the most precise and lethal weapon systems in the American arsenal. And tonight, 6 U.S. officials briefed on the matter tell NBC News the Trump administration is considering using drone strikes against the Mexican cartels.
While we were on this ride-along, suspected cartel members, they began throwing rocks at us as soon as we pulled up near what Border Patrol says is a known smuggling location. This is a scout house.
President Trump is creating a border barrier that is more than just a wall. He has now authorized the military to take control of a 60-foot strip of federal land along the border. Now, migrants would be crossing into a military installation.
Look at this. Border crossings in a remote area of Texas are picking up now that smugglers are getting desperate. And what nobody's talking about is this is not the direction people thought things were going to go at the U.S. southern border, and it's not the direction things have been going. However, reality dictates that closing the formerly open U.S. border and stopping criminals who built a $13 billion per year smuggling business won't be easy, especially since they've had unrestricted access to our country for years, giving them time to embed themselves all over the place, including the town that just made the news as being a cartel hot zone. But before we get into exactly how they got their hands on this place and the surprising things they're using it for, it's important to understand that the US has the tools to stop these criminals and shut them down. But using them is another story, because as we've seen recently, some judges and politicians have taken the side of the bad guys and are doing everything possible to prevent criminals from being sent to places like El Salvador's mega prison, which has made that country one of the safest places on earth and is one of the few places no criminal wants to wind up. Which brings us to the real reason this cartel hot zone exists and why, despite the US's best efforts, these bad guys find ways to keep operating. The war for border security is being fought on multiple fronts. You've got the actual front lines in towns and territory along it, plus you've got the war in the courts and on American television, where the general public is told members of gangs like MS-13 haven't actually done anything wrong and should be allowed to stay in America forever, even though they'll stop at nothing to illegally enter our country in increasingly bizarre ways like this.
It all started in a neighborhood about 5 blocks from the border. When police arrived, they caught these 2 men from Guatemala and Mexico.
Well, the black clothing turned out to be wetsuits. They also had these devices I think I've only seen in, like maybe the James Bond type movies.
Water propulsion devices.
So these two guys, they got into a river and used these water propulsion devices to quickly sneak into our country, bypassing Border Patrol who was looking for them. And although they were eventually caught, this reveals a level of dedication and sophistication to these criminal smuggling operations we've never seen before. And it sheds light on how these guys are taking over and maintaining their operations inside America. And as you're about to see, that's causing some parts of the border to not even feel.
They offered me $3,000 for my minor accident. This Harvard AI calculator showed me it
like America. Anymore.
News Nation getting an exclusive tour of what Border Patrol calls cartel territory in Roma, Texas, which is a small town that sits right across the U.S.-Mexico border. We captured the moment cartel traffickers confronted our News Nation team inside a zone that's become the flashpoint of an evolving turf war as the American government fights to reclaim.
So these gang members, they came out of their little hideouts when the news crew approached in a boat with Border Patrol, and they got extremely confrontational. Look at this. You've got 5 or 6 men standing here. You've got a woman, you've got a kid's swing set, you see cars, and they're essentially screaming at the news to get out of here, that they're too close, making this gesture. That's bizarre. And it just shows you how fearless these guys are. They're not wearing masks, they're not trying to hide at all, because they know that from where they're standing, Border Patrol can't do anything to stop them, which has a lot to do with why the US military might start changing up its tactics at the border. Because as you're about to see, these criminals, they've figured out how to get as close to the border as they can without risking capture or deportation.
They're controlling what and where things cross every single day, and we were essentially in their way yesterday. While we were on this ride along, suspected cartel members, they began throwing rocks at us as soon as we pulled up near what Border Patrol says is a known smuggling location. This is a scout house. It has the writing CDG, or Cartel del Golfo, aka the Gulf Cartel.
So they've got their name written right on the side of one of these buildings. And right now she's standing on US soil, but look, right over here across the river, that's where this base is, and that's technically in Mexico. These guys are right there. Apparently they use this little village as a way to hop across the river, commit crime, and then go right back, which makes them an occupying force, which conducts a series of small invasions in order to commit crime and run their enterprise. It's important these people not only get captured, but also get sent to a place where they can't escape from. Because not only is their facility very bizarre, these guys, they're not afraid to attack Border Patrol or a news crew.
It is something that we have seen in this area, and a rock is considered a deadly weapon. Everybody knows about the Gulf Cartel. That in itself lets you know the location that we're at, how we have to be a little more vigilant in those areas. It can be something them trying to do, a scare tactic on us, right? Something to show their presence, that they're there, and obviously they've come out of that house that has that lettering on it.
That's crazy. So Border Patrol says stuff like this happens to them all the time. These criminals, they're just laughing at them because they're safe over there on their side of the river, which is just a hop, skip, and not even a jump from US territory. And look at this right here. We've got Roma, Texas, which is the city, and just look at the water. There's not a whole lot of space between Mexico and the US. This is very close, and look, you can even see how the water's not even that deep in some areas. And with criminals taking over these little villages on the river, it lets them operate in plain sight and figure out what they're gonna do. But now the question is, how on earth has this been allowed to happen? And how are these people living in this little house that they took over and wrote their name name on, how are they not on a bus to a prison somewhere? And just how relentless are these guys in using this base to try and access America illegally?
And the reason that CDG Scout House, we're showing you this live here back on camera, is in kind of the perfect location is because they're able to move humans very easily right there to that island, which is actually U.S. territory, but it's kind of an area that they cross the river. They'll hide out there until they know that the Border Patrol is gone. They have scouts everywhere that are watching. They send up drones, Nicole, to see when the area is clear.
That's absolutely ridiculous. It's right there. And everyone knows that they're using this as an area to commit crime. They essentially wait on that little patch of dirt until Border Patrol's not looking, and then they make a break for it. That's how they're still able to smuggle themselves or other people into the country for money. And it's got to be incredibly frustrating for Border Patrol and the military to know that these people are totally gaming the system. They're right across the water, and oh, you can't touch us, we can do whatever we want over here. And that ability to spy on Border Patrol and our troops and take action when they least expect it. That's why the U.S. might change how things happen at the border, even if Mexico doesn't like it.
And tonight, 6 U.S. officials briefed on the matter tell NBC News the Trump administration is considering using drone strikes against the Mexican cartels. The officials told us no final decisions have been made, and they said the administration is hoping for Mexico's cooperation.
Right, so these cartels, they're on their little border base, and they're sending up their own drones into the sky to harass Border Patrol and try to find exploits. And are we really supposed to believe that they're doing this without the knowledge or even some semblance of permission from the Mexican government? They're in Mexico already. They're not covered up, which is too bad. Everyone knows their existence in Mexico is a bad deal for not only law-abiding Americans, but also law-abiding Mexicans. Yet here these criminals are controlling the leaders of that country to an extent where they feel no need to cover up or try to hide themselves in public. They operate openly. And because of how well connected these criminals are and how they've got inroads into the political game in Mexico, critics say that's why the Mexican government hasn't put a stop to stuff like this.
The Mexican president responding to our reporting today.
Nos coordinamos, colaboramos, no nos...
We've always said we do not agree. First, because we're not in agreement with any military intervention, she says, adding it would not solve anything. President Trump paved the way for military action when his government designated Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations and authorized surveillance flights by the CIA over Mexico.
What can you tell us?
So, of course, Mexico has to be against this. They're not going to let another country and their army or their air force just come into their territory and take out citizens of Mexico who the U.S. says are criminals. Plus, Mexico's president, apparently, she's not the biggest Trump supporter out there, which likely means cooperation isn't going to show up until one of two things happen. Either the U.S. takes sudden action and tells Mexico they had to in response to some cartel-related escalation at the border, or it happens because of tariffs and other types of economic pressure, put Mexico's leaders in a position where they lose more from allowing these criminals to operate than they're already losing from the horrible symbiotic relationship they've got with some of the worst gangs on the entire planet.
Drone strikes could target cartel leaders, their security forces, similar to how the U.S. used Reaper drones in the Middle East and South Asia. But many experts say U.S. military action without Mexico's consent would spark outrage in Mexico and cripple cooperation. They also question whether it would work.
So the idea that experts are questioning whether or not this would work, to me, makes it look like they don't want it to work. Because you know that the second there are drones flying over the US border is the second people stop trying to mess with it. But the thing is, right now that's not happening, which is why you've got these thugs just across the water yelling at news cameras and throwing rocks at Border Patrol officers while standing on sovereign Mexico territory. But what makes this even more frustrating is that this disputed region where this hot zone exists shouldn't actually be disputed at all.
Yeah, so we know that the Texas Land Commissioner, Dawn Buckingham, she actually has isolated 2 different islands in this area. They're pretty big swaths of land, too, several acres that this land covers. Now, this is an area that, again, belongs to Texas and the U.S., that they are being referred to as a smuggler's paradise after Texas military alerted Dawn Buckingham, the land commissioner, that these islands were, quote, being used by cartels for smuggling operation. And
so what you have here are these little uninhabited islands. They're sovereign U.S. territory, but nobody's there. There's no Border Patrol presence on them. They're just an empty patch of land, and these cartels, they're just coming across the water, getting there, and then making their way further into the country. And the reason their existence makes this a smuggler's paradise is because once you're on one of those islands, you're already in America. You've already succeeded in your goal of entering the country without permission. And from there, you can use a little boat or swim or use one of those bizarre propulsion devices to make your way further inland, where you might not see any Border Patrol.
it was an ominous feeling out there yesterday because you felt like you were being watched, and that is the reality. There's scout shacks out there. We want to show you that, these surveillance points where cartel members are actually launching drones. It's a counter surveillance tactic that Smallwood tells us is happening every single day, Nicole, so that they can have the tactical advantage. They're constantly out there watching Border Patrol.
So they had to clear out a similar island, which apparently used to be called Cartel Island. Look at this, they flattened the entire thing. Because if you don't do that, you just create a hiding place for criminals and you give them a tactical advantage that puts Border Patrol and US troops who are there in danger. And look at this, right here you can see one of these shacks which looks abandoned and has a satellite dish on it. There's obviously something going on. They're spying on the border from right here, which is incredibly frightening. And it seems like we're just a few steps away from a real problem. Now, obviously, the US doesn't want to start some sort of armed conflict with Mexico, even with a criminal group in Mexico. But that could happen in the near future if these gangs take things further than they already have. They're already putting Border Patrol in danger. They're already flying drones over US territory. Things could change, and the US military is building up right now to be ready in case something unfortunate like that happens.
President Trump's pressure on Mexico has sparked tough new measures against the cartels, and several U.S. officials told us they believe the Trump administration may be able to secure Mexico's agreement to conduct limited military strikes. They also acknowledged that going it alone would be risky.
So cooperation, of course, would be best. Now, from a military perspective, the U.S. doesn't have a whole lot to fear from Mexico, but you want to get along with your neighbors. And let's be honest, these criminals in Mexico, they're not a benefit to Mexican society. They don't help law-abiding Mexicans at all. They're sick of these gangs just like the rest of us. Perhaps even more so, since these cartels have been around for decades. But you've got to wonder how this cooperation's ever going to manifest itself, because right now you've got hostile U.S. politicians and judges sticking up for criminals and gang members, ordering them returned to America after they get deported. And this hostility inside America is going to encourage world leaders like the president of Mexico, who might not be Trump's biggest fans, to not cooperate. And that's just going to put everybody in danger. When you defend criminals, you put the law-abiding at risk, and that's what's happening here. But what do you think about this cartel hot zone right across the water from the United States? Does Mexico know about that place? Are they finding out about it from the news for the first time like the rest of us? Should they do something? What should the U.S. do? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.
How are you not tired of spending your hard-earned
Well, the southern border is essentially locked down, so that's forcing these cartel organizations, these smugglers, back to the seas. But U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they're more prepared now. They have a lot of federal partners down here working with them, and if you don't stop, when they try to pursue you, they'll make you.
So gangs and smugglers are now taking to the seas in an effort to evade capture at the U.S. border. But they've got a problem in the past. These guys could just drive their boats right onto our shores and get out. However, today, the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard are lying in wait with drones, ships, and aircraft. And if they see smugglers, they are gonna shut them down.
But now that land crossings are becoming more difficult, smugglers are moving out to sea.
They've already had 350 different incidents where they've had to shoot out the engines of these smuggling vessels. They do have a protocol. They try to get these individuals to stop first. If they don't, then they fire warning shots. If they still won't stop, then yeah, that's when they quite literally bring in the big guns. They have to shoot out these engines.
The area of operation, vast.
There's still a lot of water, and it can be very difficult to identify vessels. Right there, you can see the beginning of the border wall between the U.S. and Mexico. You can see it jutting out into the ocean.
Terradynamics just announced a $4.6 million contract expansion with the U.S. Navy to develop a fleet of these unmanned drones. When a battleship, aircraft carrier, or other vessel is deep out at sea, it can be costly and dangerous to use pilots to transport necessary equipment back and forth. Enter the XP-4, which can be used to shuttle that gear for a fraction back and forth. And dangerous to use pilots to transport necessary equipment. Fraction of the price without. Enter the XP in danger, which can be pilot carrier or transport necessary for a fraction back and forth without putting sailors in danger.
So Border Patrol and the Coast Guard are seeing surging recruitment numbers. But what nobody's talking about is that while the game plan to protect our borders may have changed, those trying to exploit it and work their way around our troops have not. And many of these smugglers taking to the seas have done this before. After all, they're part of a $13 billion per year industry, and many of the thugs driving boats and various watercraft have a history with U.S. law enforcement. And before you start thinking the drones, helicopters, and even the U.S. naval warships off our shores are overkill, it's important to understand that they're there to stop some of the most dangerous criminals on our entire planet, who, whether it's at sea or on land, will do everything down for good. And since these guys are now hiding in an area the U.S. military can't get to, they can continually launch boats and water-based incursions toward our shores, which result in daring sea-based operations like this.
Marine interdiction agents, they were actually forced to disable a vessel after it blew past Mexican Navy and U.S. Coast Guard. They refused to stop, and one of the agents actually had to shoot out one of the engines of the boat, which is actually very small and underwater.
That was a police chase on the water. You had the Coast Guard vessel literally trying to do a pit maneuver on the smugglers' craft. The same thing that happens with smugglers on the highways of America. And as you're about to see, because operations like this risk the lives of everyone involved, the U.S. is ramping up efforts to make sure they stop happening, even without the help of Mexico.
We're locked arms, and we have interleaving authorities with the Coast Guard. We have basically the same authorities as Border Patrol. We just kind of translate them to the maritime environment. But we're locked arms. You're not getting by us.
Okay, so Blake, they've already had 350 different incidents where they've had to shoot out the engines of these smuggling vessels. They do have a protocol. They try to get these individuals to stop first. If they don't, then they fire warning shots. If they still won't stop, then yeah, that's when they quite literally bring in the big guns. They have to shoot out these engines to disable them. The good news here, though, Blake, out of 350 incidents that they've recorded, 0 injuries. They're already at
350 recorded incidents, that's a lot, but the good news is nobody's gotten hurt in spite of how dangerous that might be. That right there is a success story. But it also reveals just how expensive and time-consuming it is to properly police our borders, to send highly trained experts out there to end things in the most peaceful way possible. Possible. And these guys aren't out there alone. They need technology, they need training, and they need eyes and ears all over the place to make sure that they know who's who and who's where and where they're headed. Which is why our boys at sea are about to get something new to help them.
I just want to show it to you first and foremost. This is the format for when it looks like when it's taking off and
That's
landing.
crazy.
You can see the wings actually folded up, very similar to what a helicopter might do when it takes off and lands. But it only takes less than 10 seconds for those wings to unfold. Nicole, look at this. Looks like a regular airplane, right? This is what allows it to actually glide through the air for miles at a time.
Huh, kind of like the drones that were gliding through the air miles at a time over certain parts of America. But although this is probably a completely different piece of equipment, it's gonna do a lot to help our maritime warriors stay out there longer and stop more people from coming across trying to break our laws and get into our country. These things can transport objects between locations, including supplies, and they can carry rescue equipment like life rafts to save people whose boat starts to sink before a ship is in range to pick them up. And since these things have incredible endurance, their ability to loiter in the sky will act as a visible deterrent for criminals who think they're in the clear.
When a battleship, aircraft carrier, or other vessel is deep out at sea, it can be costly and dangerous to use pilots to transport necessary equipment back and forth. Enter the XP-4, which can be used to shuttle that gear for a fraction of the price without putting sailors in danger.
Right away you see it's a very small operating ground footprint.
The CEO also envisions a future where the drone is used to deliver medicine to remote locations or carry out covert recon missions.
Where you can truly go bring...
So what most people don't understand is that the battle over border security is actually a battle over dollars and cents. And with naval destroyers like this being sent to the southern border, they require a lot of upkeep. These things are just around the clock maintenance operation in many cases. But we need the Navy off our coasts to stop people who think they can just come across whenever they want. But here's the thing, these cartels, they know each president only has 4 years to take them out. And if they can outlast a president or the resources they've got to combat them, perhaps by just lying low for the time being, in the future they'll be able to come back stronger. Especially since they seem to be benefiting from the help of the Mexican government, even if it's unintentional, which it certainly might not be.
Mexico is essentially controlled by these criminal organizations. So this week we heard from Trump's pick to be the head of the DEA, Terrence Cole. He said this in front of a Senate Judiciary Committee that he believes the majority of Mexico is governed by the cartels. Take a listen.
We've seen traditionally
the military working hand in hand. We've seen police officers working hand in hand.
It's crazy.
With cartel members. I saw the cartel's coercion of government institutions, intimidation of law enforcement, and their brutal enforcement of control over entire communities.
These cartels, they transcend politics because no matter who's in charge of Mexico, if they're embedded everywhere throughout all levels of government, in the military, in the police, they're gonna find people who they can work with to stay one step ahead of any effort to take them out. There's always a politician out there who's corrupt that they can pay off, or they can pay off that politician's underlings to sabotage their efforts. And the way they look at the country of Mexico is they see the entire place as being for sale. And since they've got plenty of money from their illegal operations that they make across the U.S. border, they probably aren't going to run out of resources to continue negatively influencing our southern neighbor anytime soon. Unless U.S. border efforts keep going the way they have, which is causing chaos for these criminals.
Now, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, she regularly refutes these claims. She points the finger back to the United States, saying, start with your own country first. Now, when we talked with Border Patrol about trust with Mexico, they have told us that the trust is there, but when the cameras aren't on and I'm talking with sources, they often tell me that Mexico is actually part of the problem and they don't do enough on the south side of the border. So one example of that is always something, bro. Was saying, hey, we're doing what we can. We're offering them places to live and to stay here in Mexico instead of going all the way to the U.S. border. But Nicole, I actually have gotten some documents along the southern border that show that they're only marked 40 to 45 days and they're clearly marked transit. So it's essentially a fast pass to get them through every checkpoint and right to our back door. So if this is Mexico helping and providing a place to live and work, you can see why those comments made by the DEA saying that there's some control there by the cartels. You can see there's some validity with that.
Here's paper and here's a pen and you should write it down. That's called Steel Hunters. It's a new Mac hero shooter for PC that you should try. Let me tell you.
So Mexico blames America for the strength of these cartels and the fact that they even exist. And they're saying, hey, America, this is your problem. Go and fix it. But then a report like this comes out that shows that the Mexican government may be facilitating the movement of these very criminals to help them do their thing. And now we have evidence that the Mexican government is allowing these guys to move through their territory with official paperwork and documents, something that's surely not shutting them down so much as it's helping them. Also, whenever you see Mexican troops patrolling the border or conducting crackdowns, there's a very good chance the gang members and cartels already knew those crackdowns were coming and see them as a cost of doing business.
Chief Patel, good morning to you. Could you imagine if the U.S. military was allowed to go into Mexico and take out these cartels? We could do it, and the reign of terror would be over. Mexico and the United States would be safer as a result of this. But the president of Mexico turned President Trump down. What's your reaction to this?
Well, you're right. There's a lot of potential here. We share so many things besides the border with Mexico, right? Family, tourism, lots of trade. And we also are fearful of the cartels that are operating in Mexico. We know that Mexico is very concerned about their influence in their society today. And so this is a potential partnership that could pay dividends for generations. And so I understand where the president is coming from.
It would pay dividends for generations of Mexicans and Americans who obey the law and just want to live and pursue happiness to the best of their ability. And the fact that the Mexican president has said troops cannot come in and cannot do their job and cannot help Mexico retake their country, that's telling. Because the presence of these
they got a whole female as a president, I tell you right there.
The common people
like,
anyway, it only benefits
but the whole female as a president, it don't seem like she can stop anything or even have the guts to do it. They gonna bitch her ass down. They gonna strip her ass down. Take all them teeth out of her mouth.
If U.S. tanks rolled across that border, it would look like the country of Mexico has completely collapsed and is totally unable to run itself.
These are her words. She said, we can collaborate, we can work together, but you and your territory, we and ours, we can share information, but we will never accept the presence of the U.S. Army in our territory.
Mexico is doing a lot. They do have 10,000 National Guard troops on the northern border. They've never done anything like that before. They really leaned in under the threat of tariffs to make sure that they were working. Kristi Noem, the Secretary of DHS, has spoken directly with the Mexican president to make sure that they're keeping up their end of the bargain as it relates to our shared responsibility on the border. But
okay, now knowing what we just heard about how these cartels operate, how they've infested the military and the police and the government, you gotta ask yourself, what good are 10,000 compromised troops gonna actually do at the U.S. border? Are those troops just placed there by Mexico so that it can look like something is gonna happen? Sure, they might make arrests here and there, they might get a few low-level criminals, but the big guys that are controlling operations within Mexico, are we really supposed to believe, in light of these reports, that they don't know what these troops are and are not allowed to do? And part of what makes this incredibly apparent is that right on the other side of the border wall, in some cases, you can see equipment and things that these gang members have set up that they think is going to help their operation, and it's like right on the other side of wall. It's within almost touching distance, but there's nothing our troops can do.
This is the reality of the evil that we're facing.
Cartels light candles to the so-called Lady of Holy Death, believing she grants protection.
What the reality is that it's demonic. It's just pure evil.
Cartels still dominate Mexico's border regions, especially in Juarez, where agents found 281 stash houses last year.
They control it 100%, contrary to what the media may say or what anything. You're not going through those areas unless you're on that cartel's.
Through the border fence, we can see this little cabinet with a hat and a lock on it, full of religious artifacts that these guys think are going to help them make it across the border successfully. And it's right there. Why is this thing locked if nobody's walking up to it and unlocking it ever to use all the stuff in there? And several news reports have mentioned that the religious-looking things in here are used by these gang members to perform little ceremonies before they try and cross the border. That's why these things are so close to the border itself. And the fact that this stuff is right here and accessible tells you who might really be in control of the Mexican side of the border.
Once crowded migrant trails now sit empty.
It is very gratifying for us to see the actual results of having consequences and having a government that is for the safety and for the well-being of our communities.
So those consequences at the border, they're not coming from the Mexican side of the border, they're coming from the U.S. side. They're coming from this massive crackdown that's happening in terms of border security, which has never happened before, and that's shutting down areas of the border on the Mexican side. The U.S. crackdown is making Mexico safer, but that also explains why now sea-based crossings and incursions are becoming more.
Look at all of them. Damn, look at that. Bro, we about to turn. They got pirates. It's gonna be One Piece. We looking for the One Piece.
Or is it even gonna be possible?
Where my straw hat at? Nigga, we out of here.
Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.
Hold on, before you pay for yet another app to manage your team, let me introduce you to Connecting, the one platform that replaces all of
This is sick.
You're looking at exclusive video obtained by NBC News. It's a traffic stop. It turns out to be something else.
Real, there's somebody in the van right there. Looks like they're running.
That looks like a man.
So footage of a massive human smuggling bust has been released, and it raises a lot of questions. Not just about who's allowed to rent a 1995 U-Haul van and what exactly their plans are for it, but also why hordes of these things are being located all over the place, sometimes by nervous neighbors before ICE can track them down. And as you're about to see, these vans are being used to move people around who could be incredibly dangerous.
Police say these are Chinese nationals being smuggled into the U.S. This police body camera footage shows two separate January incidents.
Hey, we got the
I'm done watching this shit. I want to
Illegal
see.
crossings are moving from the southern border to the beaches of California. CBP says undocumented migrants are trying to sneak into the U.S. by boat.
Watch this shit, bro. Ooh. See, when I was hooping, bro. When I was hooping, bro, back then, that's all I was scared of in basketball is get crossed up and put on a mixtape. And hey, I got crossed up and put on a mixtape. But that's cold. Everybody, niggas get crossed up, man. Shit happens. But damn. I'm gonna get mixed up. Whew. Oh, get grass. Get grass. Ooh. That ankles was suspended. Ooh. Shit. Yeet. Oh, he went out. He's out of there. Damn. They call it charging. Whew. Oh, he tore his ACL. Somebody was screaming. I ain't carry like a motherfucker. God damn. This nigga, how you gonna cross somebody up and then just say fuck the shot? No, he crossed him so bad. He said, nah, I ain't gonna do you. Yeah, I miss this shit. Whew. Damn. Bro, still on the floor. He's still sleeping to this day. Oh yeah, her bop ass. Betty bop, 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 bop. Take your ass back over there where you belong. Ho. Whore. He still tried to recover. Never get that one. Oh, bro. Skippity doo. Whoop. Whoop. He saw it all on his face. It was over with. He making the team for sure. Yeet. Yeet. Oh, Bimbo. Straight from the village. Straight from the village. Damn, ankles just gave out. Damn. Alright, yeah, bro getting cooked. Yeah, it's over with. He too nonchalant with it. Yeah, you're done. Yeah, he was folded before he even saw the crossover. Yeet! It was 2011. Bro, that hezzy, bro, is dangerous. Whew. If you know how to do the master that shit, it's over with, bro. Whew. Whew. Oh, he double dribbled though. I ain't gonna even lie to you. Look at that. Look at that. Hold on. He double dribbled, bro. But he must have had it right there. That's cold work. Hoop. Hoop. Alright, so this right here, I'm going to tell you, whoever's watching. I played in this league. My dad ran one of these teams called Bake City. It was the orange team. But Curry was, his punk ass only played one game in this shit. I wanted to play against his ass, but he was just playing Bay Pride that day. So, and then eventually Jeremy Lin got on their team. All kind of motherfuckers, bro. But I'll never forget this shit. Everybody and their mama was there for Curry's shit. Yeek. Whew.
Yeah, so what we've basically done is create a new kind of community college where anybody who would
Bro slid. Bro slid. Oh, bro, you need to give it up. Let him just watch him. Isn't that Dunbar? Well, that's Tyler. His name is right there. She ain't going to go get Starbucks that. She didn't go get Starbucks that night. God damn. Levette. Bryce Cook. Hey, old girl over there, she said. Oh, girl said, look at her face, bro. Bro, look at her face, bro. Oh shit. Bro, look at her face, dog. She said, oh my God. Don't give it up. You ain't getting no Uzi tonight, buddy. Ooh. Hola. How you doing, brother? And make sure you subscribe, like and subscribe, brother. This motherfucker said, no bueno, no bueno. No bueno. What's up with people, bro? I don't know. Bro sounded crazy on that hardwood. Shit. That's one thing about basketball. If you are defending this dude like that up the court, you're gonna get burnt if he know what he's doing. If you're not stopping him from going forward, from progressing, then you might as well just get back and just sit back and wait till he pull up, because he ain't gonna shoot from half court. So you might as well just save your energy and back the fuck up unless your coach told you to press his ass. But no moments, there ain't even no point of pressing nobody. Whoa.
And that's a wrap.
I'm gonna cut it short for right now. I'll be back on. Bye, Tomato.